changed different now, got the cheat code. Lottie, I just watching, you ain't got the cheat code. Can't stay the same, yeah, you gotta switch it up. Can't stay the same, yeah, you gotta switch it up. Game changed different now, got the cheat.
All right, welcome back to the Goddess Giselle podcast. I'm your host, Goddess Giselle. You are tuned into episode 13. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. But if you're new here, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I created this space to really shed light on women making an impact in their communities across the world. I think when we share stories of women, we could truly change the world with just one conversation, one story at a time. So today I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Kimberly Renee. First of all, she was named 2022's 2022's Woman of the Year by USA Today. She is a sought after speaker, powerful storyteller, and someone I met along my creative journey. And I'm so excited to bring you all her conversation, her energy, and everything else. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Kimberly Renee. How are you doing?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me, for the invitation. It's good to see you again, and I can't wait for our chat today.
Yes, Kimberly, I'm so excited to have you here because I'll be honest, when we first met, we just clicked because I feel like we come from a similar time, space, and reality, right? We're from a similar part of the universe, but we express ourselves in such a different way. And so I was sitting here reading your biography in 2022, 2020, rewind. In 2020, you had such an amazing, I feel like, breakthrough as a creator, as an artist, as a storyteller. And there was just so much power coming from your energy in your sacred space. But before we get into that, I like to start the conversation by asking you to name 3 people, places, whether public figures or personal, that inspire you and why.
Ooh. Okay. Honestly, I think I'll name 2 specific people, but I'll give a general for my third one, and I'll start with the third one. So honestly, I find inspiration everywhere. I think I take little bits of the energy and the stories that I see online that I, cross paths with. I mean, I get inspiration everywhere. I know we're going to end up talking about the podcast that I created soon, but a lot of what I shared in the podcast are little bits and pieces that I just grabbed from places that I can't even remember. You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm a sponge in that way, that I'm taking inspiration from everywhere. But as far as like people who inspire me, I would say first, Ida B. Wells is probably one of my favorite inspirational, motivational journalists. I mean, she spent a good portion of her career, if not the entirety of her career, fighting for Black people and highlighting stories that people weren't ready to talk about. She had newspapers that talked about how Black people were being lynched and white people were ignoring it. And she was like, no, this is not okay. This is not just, and we need to talk about it. So I feel like Ida B. Wells we're kindred in that way. Like I relate to her very much.
Yes.
I remember reading once where she was talking about, she actually got kicked out of school. I don't know why she got kicked out, but I'm on her side. Whatever the reason is,
exactly,
I'm on her side. It ain't her fault. It's because she got into an argument with the dean or something. I'm like, no, it's not her fault.
Yes.
I would say secondly, let me see if I can pick somebody who's like still alive. Okay, so, what is her name? So I know you're gonna know who she is. She played in, I think, Waiting to Exhale, and also there's a meme where she's like throwing a cigarette or something and catching a car on fire. Her name is
Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett.
Okay. Angela Bassett.
I love me some Angela Bassett for different reasons. Number one, she's gorgeous. 2, she's incredibly talented. And she just seems to be like the epitome of class and somebody who's been in the industry for a really long time that is really never in any type of drama. Like you never hear her name in mess.
Yeah.
She's always encouraging everybody else. So I respect her. I find inspiration and her muscles. You know what I mean? She's just always
gotta give
it's giving everything. You know what I mean? So I
yes.
her as an actress and, you know, as a woman and somebody who is just showing up as her true self without being in a lot of mess. You know what I'm
There
saying?
you go. I love it. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Angela Bassett is one of them ones. Okay. I know she played the queen in Black Panther 2. I can't remember if she was a Black Panther 1. I'm sure she was, but I recall that most of the story on Black Panther 2 was centered around her as the queen and kind of coming into her throne. And obviously, I'm not going to talk about the whole movie, but just seeing her in that essence, I think she definitely represents that queen energy for us all. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, and also I want to say, give it a moment of silence and thank you publicly to Nikki Giovanni. We called her home. She was called home yesterday publicly, right? Yesterday. And I saw so many Black women, Black people, Black men just sharing their thoughts and prayers. And, you know, it was so funny because I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to Kimberly tomorrow, who I believe you to be like a writer, a literary, a activist, and so much that the spirit of Nikki Giovanni, right? Like, what are the odds that we come here and talk? And I know myself, I've written poetry, I blog. And so shout out and thank you to Nikki Giovanni for your spirit and your being. I like to share. Well, now I have a platform to share. When I was an undergrad, I actually had the chance to hear her speak. She came to lecture at the university that I attended, which is the University of Alabama. So PWI. And so I was Black at UA, and that was a whole culture in itself. And, you know, there were different creatives who would create pretty much documentaries and content, which we didn't call it content back then. We were calling it film and art and writing, you know, right? It wasn't just content. Like it's still meaningful. And so there were artists who was putting out their energy, and Nikki Giovanni came to the university and she came to speak. And I would never forget what she told me and the other Black students that were there. It was supported by the Black Student Union. She said, I know y'all here at this university and you're Black. And I know Vivian Hood came here, James Hood. But listen, you all are the integrators. She said, you are the integrators. We didn't fight all those fights in the 60s and 70s and 80s for y'all not to come and integrate. So when she said that you all are the integrators, it literally slapped me upside my head. It's like, Giselle, I know it's hard being Black in this space, but listen, you're here to continue the movement. And Kim, you just bringing out all this energy of me, because I'm not gonna lie, when I was in undergrad, I became a Black Panther. When I tell you I was for the cause, like I had got so aware of injustice, if you will. So ignorance is bliss, but once you become aware, you're gonna have to pick a side and do some work. So that's where I found myself. But Kimberly, let's rewind a little bit to I'm speaking frankly, 2020. Okay. 2020 happened. We all paused. We're trying to figure out what's going on with this health scare, the global pandemic. But then on the other side of that, we had a lot of Black activism. I'm going to use that word, activism, just kind of woke up amongst all the Black folks all across the world, right? So it wasn't just the United States. And Kimberly, I feel like your spirit was awakened just like the rest of us, but you were in action and in motion with that spirit. So can you talk to me a little bit about 2020? Like, where were you? What happened? And how did you become and get into this space of like, I got something to say and y'all finna hear it. Like, please tell us, because that's the vibe. It was like,
right. So interestingly, in 2020, my focus at the time was actually just finding ways to help people.
Okay.
So, because the thing is, we had this rise of people who were acknowledging what had happened with George Floyd. And I felt in that moment, I felt like, what can I do? Like, I felt defeated in some ways. I felt powerless in some ways. And I know people were, marching, and it's like, okay, we can go outside and march. I was like, yeah, I know, but there's something else happening simultaneously. Like, there are people that are hungry right now. There are people who can't pay their bills right now because we don't have the same support that other nations are providing during this pandemic where we're all in lockdown. And so, Giselle, I'll be honest, I had a dream And that dream gave me an instruction.
Mm.
And that dream was to feed the entire nation. And I said, I'm not Jesus. I said, I barely got three, I barely got some loaves and fish here. Like, have you seen my bank account? I don't know where you thought all this was going to come from. But how that's going to happen. And so I tell you that every night I kept having a dream very similar. And it was just like, you need to do it. You need to do it. I'm like, I said, okay, listen, universe, listen, if you want me to do it, you need to provide some direction. Mm-hmm. How am I? Because at the time, there were some things that were happening in my life personally. So my grandmother was really sick. My aunt was really sick. And so I'm dealing with that. And I had left where I was staying because I was in DC at the time. And my mom had called me and she was like, so your grandmother and aunt are really sick. And so if you want to see them before they die, you probably should come down here, especially since we're under threat of lockdown. And so I was actually staying in my old bedroom from like elementary school, middle school with my mama and left my apartment because of the pandemic. And so all of this is happening at the same time. Like, I'm dealing with these family issues. I'm staying at my mother's house as a grown-up. So you know that there's that, right?
Right.
So now I have this vision coming to me, like, you need to feed everybody. And I'm like, how? So long story short, I started to map out some things using the technologies that I understood.
Okay.
And I came up with a way to feed anybody anywhere. And so I identified the partners, and the first partners I identified, I sent them all emails and I was like, yes. And everybody came back to me and was like, no. And I'm like, you know what?
Now, this was around the time where, let's just say, the corporations and brands were trying to.
This was right before that. This was right before that. This was before George had died. Okay. So I sent all these messages and everybody was like, nah. And I'm like, all right, universe, I tried. What do you want me to do? The dreams kept happening. I'm like, okay, cool. Then George Floyd died.
Okay. Which was summer. That was summer 2020. Okay.
Right. Then George Floyd died. And then all of these brands were like, oh, we're listening and we're learning and we don't know what to do. And I was like, I had a group of volunteers and I reached out to one of them because she was helping me pitch. And I was like, okay, what if we adjust our pitch? Because I already have a background in DEI when it comes to being a speaker and all of that. I said, what if I offer free services to them? And what they give to me is food to give to everybody else. I said, what if we just exchange? Because I know y'all trying to figure out what to do. Y'all don't know what to do because y'all just got here. Hello. And so we sent all the emails back out again. And then immediately it was like, okay, yes, we need help. Please help us. And so from there, I was able to identify several partners. And the way we structured it is I had basically a web interface. So I identified therapists, group home managers, people who worked in social services, all of that. And I was like, hey, do you have people that you serve who need help, who need food? And they were like, heck yeah. And so I had already built those partnerships now with all of these brands. And I was like, okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to request food on behalf of their client. And then you're going to get that request and then you're going to send it. And I was like, if you have a mailbox, I can feed you.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's what we did. And so that work sent me all over the country, all over the world talking about it. I even landed up, I even got this email, Giselle, I thought it was spam, girl. I thought somebody tried to scam me. It was this email. They were talking about, hi, we heard about your work. We're in Paris and we'd love to bring you out. I'm like, oh, you trying to get my money, ain't you? You trying to scam me? Girl, no. They flew me out, honey.
What?
They flew me out to Paris. They was like, we want you to talk about the work that you're doing and how you're doing it. And so we can mimic it. And I'm like, are you serious? So I'm in Paris.
Ninjas in Paris. Excuse me.
Yes. Negroes in Paris. I was
there. We go.
And talking about this work.
Wow.
And, as I went through with this process, I started meeting a lot of people who had very similar values, who were interested in similar things and who were doing kind of similar work. And I was like, I feel like we could actually solve hunger with this model because if y'all have overage and
Mm-hmm.
these people need it, if there's a way to say, I need overage, can you send it to me? Why couldn't we address everybody's food insecurity?
Right.
And I ended up having a conversation with an organization, and they were like, you know what, that's a really incredible idea. We want to bring you on to help bring your ideas into what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've learned in our process is that several nonprofits don't actually want to solve the problem because it would put them out of a job. And I said, oh, okay. I said,
Didn't
okay,
even know they was
I
being
said,
shady like that.
I didn't know. I'm like, because I'm literally, I can give you the technology that I built so
Yeah.
that you can use this model to help everybody in your community.
Yep.
Uh-uh.
They ain't want to hear it.
No, not a one.
What?
So that's what was happening in 2020. That's what led to USA Today giving me that honor. That's what kind of because I was focused on food at the time, because I was,
Yeah.
cooking and doing some other things. And that's really what my social media was about. It was about food. And so
Vegan,
that
because
was
aren't you?
right.
You was in the
Yeah.
vegan girl era, which you kind of
What?
championed again prior to the trend. I was on trend. So in 2020, my husband and I went vegan, and we took our stab at that type of food or whatever. But this is Food Love by Might Be Vegan. So the
Correct.
concept, the project is called Food Love, but Might Be Vegan is the work that you were already doing as a vegan culinary artist.
Correct.
Girl. And tell me about this dream. Like, what was that like? Because on this channel, I like to talk about divine feminine energy, self-love, intuitiveness, aligning those chakras, being in alignment. And Kimberly, it sounds like you were in alignment and you kept just getting tapped on the shoulder. And it was up to you to actually listen and receive and come up with a plan. But you were already getting those messages. So what was that like? So I know it was like an actual dream, but what inspired you to just be like, you know what? Yes, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put in the work. What was that like?
I feel like I didn't have a choice because it was so emotional. Like it was one of those, like, it felt urgent.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I could not run away from it. I remember having a conversation with my mom and I was just literally in tears. Like, Mom, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I can't escape what I am sensing and feeling. And so, and she was just like, well, if God is given to you, the way it'll be made, she's a little churchy. And so that's how she gave it to me.
Right.
So, from there, it was just a matter of like, I don't have a choice but to surrender because you ain't giving me no options.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a like, here's a choice. Would you like to do this? If you don't want to do it, that's fine. We just go keep talking to you until you do it. And because it just the urgency of it, I just had to. And so I'm like, I don't have anything to risk. I don't have anything to lose with it.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm going to test my little system out. I had several volunteers who were helping me. And I was like, even if we just got to raise some money to feed some people, like we're going to try. But once we figured out that partnership method and the first partner said yes, I was like the tears were just flowing. I'm like, okay, I think we can do this, And so we tested it with a few people. I actually have a couple of friends who are therapists and I had reached out to them. And they were like, when they said, yes, we need help. I said, okay, we'll test this out. Let's see how it works. I said, well, let me know when they get their food, And so when it was coming to life and people were sending me photos, like the food, they were like, you don't know what this means. Like we didn't have anything left. And listen, I'm talking about families of 10 that were getting boxes for weeks to like put in their freezer of just food. And like fresh food. Because most of the time when you go to these food banks, they give you boxed food or they give you canned food. And those items have a place. This is not me trying to shame that, but I wanted to give people something that was healthy because you also remember what the backdrop is. This is COVID-19 period, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to give people something fresh that was going to support their immune system. Not laden with salt, not laden with salt or laden with a bunch of sugar and that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yep. And it's a even that cycle that you had to even speak through, like, okay, we want to give food, but not just any food, real food, because now we have this global pandemic, and now health is at the top of everyone's concern. So it's just this loop of impact, Kimberly. So shout out to you for being obedient, this loop of impact, and how many different layers of touch that you had just by being obedient to that one thing. And it's so funny. Also on this channel, I like to talk about our multidimensional selves. And I know we're going to get into the podcast, but Kim, let's rewind even a little bit more. It's so funny. You talk about history, and I'm all up in your history. Even though we have like current events, we're going to take it back to paint the story. So you are an HBCU grad. Yep. Studied marketing from North Carolina A&T State University, baby. Okay, don't play with her. Listen, I like to honor the HBCUs and all of our collegiate experiences because it helps shape who we are. But you got to make the decision to take that journey, right? So how did you go from marketing to content park once upon a time? I met you in the content park era, right? But then you continued to evolve, and then you went to the vegan girl era, and it's all unfolding. And now today we're going to be talking a little bit about your podcast, which is Now. How did you paint your own way? Like, you are among those who are finding your own way as a millennial, as a creative. So how do you even get in that digital space? And I mean, honestly, like, how do you do that? Like, what is the pathway? Like, what is guiding that, just this flow? If you could talk to us about that.
So Content Park itself, it was an outgrowth of, I have to start something because I have too many clients. Okay. And so here's what was happening. So I was working in Charlotte, North Carolina at an organization that was doing SEO, search engine optimization. This is me in my marketing bag, right? And so one of the things that they were asking us to do is we had to pretend to be other people in order to pitch and land content on behalf of the clients that our employer was serving in order to get links on their website. So basically what would happen is, like, we would have a client who worked in telecom. And so we would pretend to be, let's say, an expert in, I don't know, giving as an expert speaker. We were not expert speakers. We were not expert anything, but our goal was to get a link for our client on somebody else's website that had a reputable domain. So it would improve the domain reputation of our client. I got tired of lying. I was like, I said, I can't keep doing this. Like, I said, I understand that this is my job, but I'm tired of lying to people to get something from them. And I said, can I just be myself, please? Yep. And they were like, try whatever you want to try, girl. Like, it's your world. So I did. And so I pitched myself as a writer. I already was a writer. And I said, well, let me write some content for you for free. I was already being paid. They didn't know that. I was being paid by my employer. And so as I was pitching all of these brands, like, can I write for you? Or these bloggers, rather, they were like, we love the content. Can you write something else? And I was like, well, I actually got, in my mind, I'm like, well, I got to go to work tomorrow because I got another job to do, because I got another client that I got to serve. But now you want me to keep writing because you like what I wrote. Okay. Well, because I was pitching myself, I don't want to just show up, looking crazy now. So I'm like, I guess I can write on the side now. Started writing on the side. I had picked up so many clients that I had to hire a writer to write for me while I was at work. Because I had too many people who were like, we love this. Can you do more? Yes. So I ended up hiring a writer. And then I said, okay, this is starting to get out of hand, because now I have like 15 clients because we're pitching people all day. Okay. And I'm like, okay, now I need another writer. So now I got 2 writers who are working for me. And I'm like, I wonder if this could be a business. Exactly. I am pitching people to see if they need a writer. And then I'm representing those who do this on a regular basis, who want to stay at home and be a freelance writer. What? And it ended up becoming that. My breaking point, where I was like, okay, at the point in which I am making my current salary outside of the business, I will leave. Girl, that took 2 months. I was like, all right, we out. And they were like, Kimberly, what happened? We're ready to promote you. I said, no, I'm good. Right. Said, thanks for for the leg up. I appreciate it. And so that's how Content Park was born. It was born out of me not wanting to be a liar at work.
Listen.
to where now I am actually pitching brands, and now they need, again, this is pre-chat GPT where everybody can write, with a computer.
Okay.
So, and we saw that coming. Like, we knew that, as I got towards the end of Content Park, like, I knew that eventually it would be much more difficult for freelance writers to get the volume of content writing that we had, because we recognized that AI was coming in. We recognized that AI was going to, it was moving quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So in like 2017, I was like, okay, I'm starting to see the industry as far as like hiring freelance writers wane. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm even seeing there being fewer journalists. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to need to pivot. I don't know what I want to pivot to.
Yeah.
And so we ended up passing our clients to another business, another freelance writer who does incredible work, who I worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, what am I passionate about? And I'm like, I'm passionate about food.
Okay.
And I'm like, let me try that. You know, because as a creative person, like, sometimes when the thing that you love becomes your work, it's no longer fun anymore.
True.
Like, when you have to do it all the time to pay the bills, it's like, I ain't really enjoying this for real.
True.
So I wanted to get into something where that light would come back on, in my heart. And so that's where food was. And that's, because I love cooking. I always had people over. I love all of that. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, that's when I got into Might Be Vegan. And that's how I started cooking for people at home. I started introducing recipes online. I started considering doing a cookbook, and like, I did a couple of ebooks and things like that. And then all of that was moving forward until we got to the pandemic. Right. And so when we got to the pandemic, it was like, okay, I'm not really cooking in people's homes anymore because, we're not doing that. And so now it's like, well, what's next? What am I going to do now? Because pretty much a lot of it was on hold. And so now I'm doing mostly online content. I'm cooking on camera. I'm doing all of that. And that's great. It's cool on Instagram, and I'll make a little change for that.
Yeah.
But do I want to continue to grow that?
Right.
And then that's when 2020 happened, as I mentioned. And then that's when the intersection between food and racism became pertinent, because I don't think people realize that racism is everywhere. Like,
everywhere.
Even in how we access our food, whether we're talking about food apartheid or what some people call food deserts, like, that is an intentional move that keeps Black and poor people from accessing healthy food. Yeah. So that's the platform that I spoke from, because I already recognize institutional and structural racism. So when I was talking about that to these brands, and they were food brands, they started to get like, oh, I understand now what my role is. Right. Because now I understand how racism intersects with my business. And so those were the conversations that we were having as I was saying, now give me some food so I can give to homegirl over here in Arizona. You know what I mean?
Like, give me some food.
Right. And I'm like, I know y'all have waste. I know you have waste. So Kimberly, let me use that and then pass it along. And so when I started talking about the racism of it, people got excited about that. And that's how it ended up shifting away from food into just talking about history overall. And so that was kind of the journey, that it wasn't like it sounds like a stark turn, but when you remember the George Floyd moment, and you put in the part about having Food Love by Might Be Vegan and why we had Food Love by Might Be Vegan, then the shift to focusing on historic content and elevating that, it makes a lot more sense, because it was already in my heart. It just was something that I talked about all the time online. On top of that, when you challenge the system doesn't always want to pay you to challenge the system. And so those sorts of conversations were not very
PC.
Right. They weren't PC, and they weren't the type of things that like, oh, we'd love to partner with Kimberly. She's always calling us out. Like, no, I'm going to tell you the truth, but finding brand partners that were willing to be comfortable with those conversations was difficult. Like, I even have a very specific brand partner that I remember that actually gave me a grant for the work that I was doing. Wow. And then I think probably 6 months later, I called them out, and I was like, first of all, slaves? Are you serious right now? And so I sent an email to as many people who I knew that worked there. And I was like, I'm about to publish this, but I wanted
Mhm.
y'all to see it first. Because first of all, what are
What
you
is
doing?
this?
Uh,
Girl,
uh,
Kimberly, mother effing Renee. Okay, that's what it sounds like. All I'm missing is shafts and the black. I should have worn black. I'm tripping, but it's all good. Listen, when I tell you it's the spirit, where are you from originally, Kimberly?
Originally, I'm from North Carolina.
Okay, and what's your zodiac sign, if you don't mind sharing?
I am a Libra.
Libra, balance. Baby, it's all about balance and justice around here, okay? You ain't gonna ever go too far this side, too far that way. That makes so much sense that you are in this space. Wow. So listen, and I know we have a very diverse audience here, but to the girls and guys who are in undergrad, who are in the beginning of their career, trying to figure out when, and where I enter. Shout out to the Black authors and literary geniuses before us. Look at Kimberly Renee, okay? Look, just check the vibes. Listen, y'all, because you can create your own way. We have to write ourselves into these stories, into history. I heard another Black author poet said that, and she meant it, and I agree. They're not set up for us to be in the story. So we have to write ourselves into the story however you see fit. Kimberly, okay, so now I'm kind of getting kind of closer to current time. So we done pivoted. Now we talking our shit, for lack of
Yes.
better terms, on Instagram. Talk to
Yes.
me. And now you have over 200,000 followers, verified account before you could pay. Listen,
Right.
sharing the voice of the people, the sentiments of even our ancestors and those before us and behind us and beside us who got something to say. Talk to me about what it was like with that first, maybe let's say first 5 to 10 posts, when you start making noise and maybe you start
Yeah.
getting different comments and different energy coming your way.
Yeah.
One, what was that like? And two, how did you find the courage to keep pushing through, that resilience to be like, I don't care nothing about the trolls. And then we're going to dive right into the podcast. Oh, some
Yes.
good content right here, girl. I love you. Boy, you put me on my toes now. I feel like I'm talking, you a storyteller. We sitting here telling stories. Okay. Anyway. Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I appreciate that, alley-oop. It made total sense to me.
Like,
So the telling stories about Black history is often will amplify people's biases.
Mhm.
And when people are in the face of their biases, they often react to the person who's telling them about said bias, right?
Mhm.
And oftentimes the stories that we have been told are not truth. You know, I mean, one of the very first lies that I remember being taught in school was the lie of Christopher Columbus. We can all relate to that. We
Mhm.
assume that he was a hero. We have him still on our calendars, and we
Yep.
have people that still talk about him as one who discovered America. We know today that that is far from the truth. We know that he was the one who was discovered by the by the indigenous people who found him.
Yep.
We know that he was a violent man. We know that he caused a lot of harm.
Mhm.
And he is not a person that we identify as a hero, at least
Yep.
not the same people that I know. So there are many lies in history. There are many things that we are told, or many things that we have never been taught, that could also be encouraging to us, especially to Black people, to say, wait, I never knew this person existed. To give
Mhm.
you an example, I was in Paris. Remember, to bring that back up, I was in Paris,
Yes.
and I did a Black history tour in Paris, because I always do a Black history tour when I'm in a new place.
Mm.
And so I was in Paris, and we went on this tour, and they told me, they said, yeah, so Three Musketeers, that was written by a Black man. I said, excuse me? So I went my whole life, I read that book, and I did not know that he was a Black man. And so
Wow.
that reaction is what I took to Instagram. I said, tell me, am I the only person who knew that this author was a Black man? Like, did y'all
Uh-huh.
know that? Is that just me? And they were like, no, we didn't know either. I said, okay, cool. And so that's the energy that I bring. When I learn something, I'm like, did you know that? Is it just
Right.
me? And so that's how I tell the stories. When it shocks me, when it surprises me, when it
Mhm.
encourages me, when it frustrates me, that's when I tell the story. So I lead with my emotional reaction when I'm telling the
Mhm.
stories. And so as the account started to grow, of course, there were trolls that came. Of course,
Yeah.
there were people who were unhappy. Of course, there were people who loved it. I mean, obviously, because the account was growing. But I also had to make a decision to turn off my direct messages and to turn off comments to only people who follow me. Because leaving that sort of heartfelt research, which not only takes time, but it takes emotion depending on what you're looking up, and to have people come and want to spit on it. And it's like, I don't have time for you. Like, this is, if you don't like it, that's fine, but it's not for you. And so you don't have permission to come in my space and be rude, to me or to be rude to other people. So I had to do that really early. This was like before I even crossed over 100,000, before the blue check was there. I was like, we got to turn it off. But when the blue check came, I realized that I can't even go out there and comment on people's stuff, because before everybody could access and now pay for a blue check, to pay for verification, the blue check comments were pushed to the top in the comment section. And so now anytime I said something on people's pages, everybody sees it first. And so now I'm getting all of these, and I'm like, this is too much. I was like, I'm trying to be supportive. I said, but y'all coming at me for literally no reason. Most of y'all don't even know what you're talking about. You're just coming out your butt saying stuff that you heard from somebody when you was in school. And you was a C student. So like, you even I was being taught that was a lie, you still failed at it, baby. So like, come on, leave me alone. So those were some of the safeguards that I had to put in for myself, for my own sanity, because I don't know, like, I am an incredibly like emotional and intuitive person. And so when I am researching and I am studying about our culture and our history, I am connecting to the thing that happened to them. Like, there have been times where I will read something and I just start bawling. Like, it takes me a while to just even be like, I don't even know if I can talk about this. A lot of times I don't have a regular posting schedule, because it is an emotional drain for me. So imagine taking that emotion, presenting it to somebody, and people are like, you a liar, you don't know what you talking about. Like, you know what? Cut it out. Those things that I had to do that. I had to set those safeguards for myself. And then there's so many police outside today. Like, I am hearing so many cop cars. I don't know if you can.
Oh, I don't hear them, but it's because we bringing the alarm, baby.
What's going on outside? Right. But nevertheless, I wanted to be able to present content and to present our stories in a way that was palatable, in a way that felt like somebody was teaching you, but they weren't teaching you in a way where they thought they were better than you. Because I'm learning as I go. Like, I don't call myself a historian. Like, people have called me that, and I'm like, if you want to call me that, that's fine. That's not what I call myself. I am a student. I learn. I am a researcher. I am good at research, but I don't put labels on myself to call myself something that other people have worked and studied to become. True. I would say maybe I'm a public intellectual, but I didn't like history in school. It was my least favorite subject. It was the only subject that I got B's in, because I just did not want to memorize a bunch of stories about white people who I didn't relate to. And I have a bad memory. So it's just like, it wasn't working. I'm like, I already don't like these people, and then I got to memorize them and what happened in 1742 and 59. And I don't remember that.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
So to come to a place where I did not like history to now talking about history, like I am very careful not to call myself something that I don't see myself as. Does that mean that I'm not a good storyteller? No. Does that mean that I don't know how to get into those archives and find amazing stories? No. It just means that I am not an expert. Yeah. And so we are learning together.
And thank you so much for that, Kimberly. And I admire the tenacity, the audaciousness, the audacity, and really the spirit, because anyway, I've been very interested in the mind, body, spirit connection, right? And I went on my own spiritual journey in 2020. I got awakened to really that divine feminine energy that lies within us. And for a lot of us, it has been sleep. And it's just like you're a sleeping goddess, like you're asleep, but you got so much to do. Like, you literally got the message in a dream. Like, you were asleep, and the spirit, the goddess within you, was like, all right, Kimberly, wake up now. It's time to go to work. And so it's just been so nice to hear you share your journey and how you were able to listen, really be obedient and listen to the spirit, the intuitiveness that comes from within. And Kimberly, me and you have so much in common. One, we're both millennials. Two, we're both creatives. Three, we met in our flow, right? In our creative flow once upon a time here in Atlanta, Georgia. And four, we are millennials. Let me speak to the camera. We are millennials who have built this industry for you Gen Zers and everyone beneath us to thrive in, okay? We are the digital creators that created and paved the way of this industry that you all love to cap in. We didn't get to cap in our industry of being creative. We were just happy to be sharing our stories. And come to find out, shout out Clea Trapper, come to find out, people getting big money from being in digital, right? And of course, we evolved with the industry. So yeah, we got our bag too. But once upon a time, we were just hoping for the best and trying it out, figuring it out. So Kimberly, talk to me about your experience as a digital creator and being able to drive change through storytelling, through Instagram, through archives, through sharing your passions, really, because I think millennials, we kind of anchored that industry of doing what you love, right? We thought we could really do it. And we actually was right. We were right. We could do it. We're doing it now. But it was not always so simple. There was not a TikTok, and there weren't as many tools to help us advance. And now we have AI. So it's knocking it out the park, content park. But Kimberly, talk to me about your experience in digital and kind of figuring it out as you went. Because we talked about your profession, but what was that like for you? This is a safe space.
Yeah. So it's interesting because starting off with Content Park, which was the writing agency, that was content. That was content for brands, but it was still content.
Yeah.
And, I cut my teeth learning with other writers who have been around for a while, and journalists and marketing professionals who have been around for decades, who were showing me how, like, this is how content performs well online. But a lot of it was content that you read. And so moving into digital, where now I have to put a face on, was like, it's tiring to me, because I want to be able to tell a story. I don't want to have to put my face together. Like, I just want to be able to write, you know what I mean? Because I'm a writer. Like, I go into my little cocoon and I write. So it was different for me to have to put my face up there. But like, people be like, but you got a nice face. And that's fine. But that don't mean I want my face all over the internet all the time. You know, sometimes I just want to tell the story and let the story live. But with digital, it's your face or nothing. It's it's put yourself out there, let people connect with you, because that's where we are right now. So that shift that went from Facebook to Instagram, from Instagram being photos to then video, was like, okay, well, if you want to move with this, then you have to move with video. Because I've been tried to be like, oh, I'm just gonna cook without my face. It's like, we don't really like that. They ain't really what we like. I mean, it's cute, but we don't really like that. But when I sat down and was like, here's my face, let me tell you a story, that's when it moved. That's when my page started to move. So I think now one of the things that really excites me is in this digital space. I think that's why audio is so interesting to me, because I don't have to put on a face all the time. It's the reason that, like, for YouTube, it's like, I struggled with YouTube because it's like, I don't want to be out here. And I know the people who have faceless YouTube pages. I know that. But I just was like, I didn't relate to that yet. I didn't relate to it yet. So it's been new for me. It's been new to put my face out there. It's been new to be in random places and people like sending me messages like, are you at such and such? I'm like, okay. I don't consider myself famous. But then to get messages and I'm like on my phone and I'm like, are you at the such and such airport? Child. That's a different level of like
intimacy.
Like, I'm just trying to tell y'all stories.
No.
But that's something that's new. I don't get it as much. I have friends who have a whole lot more followers than me and they get stopped all the time. So it's like when I'm with them, it's kind of like being with celebrities. I have one friend in particular who his focus is squirrels. So he has an entire feed about squirrels that he has named and all of this. And so when in times where we have been out, like we'll be stopped like 3-4 times in just one outing of hanging out. So that's not me. That don't happen to me. I'm not there. And I appreciate that. But it's different because now you have this persona and expectations of people. And now you're crossing over into how do people see you as a public figure versus how do people perceive you as a storyteller? And those are two very different worlds. And I'm kind of like in the middle of both right now.
Oh, that's so nice. That's very interesting. You're like, nice. I'm trying to figure it out. It's cool because it brings light to the now, right? Mm-hmm. So welcome to the journey, y'all. We've been on the flow of Kimberly Renee, and now we're in the current timeline where, creative arts and digital and being online, we are the new celebrities. Okay, I'm going to use that word, celebutante. Like your energy is felt, and if somebody rock with you, they feel like they know you, which I love that too. And really, this is just kind of free game as far as because you got us together talking. This is free game about how to continue to pivot and move forward as the world evolves, because we are in the age of Aquarius, so things are moving rapidly. We got AI, we got technological advancements, but this is just the new normal where everyday people who have a voice, which we encourage you all to use your voice, you will now be seen and heard, right? So it's so funny. Once upon a time, we weren't seen, we weren't heard, we didn't have no content, nothing. But fast forward 2024, Black is king, Black is king, Black is queen, right? You got the creators, the influencers, the streamers. Some of the top streamers in the world are Black. And so there is a new world emerging right before our eyes. And I definitely encourage you to jump right in, start where you are, jump right in, and be inspired by even Kimberly's story and just sharing how you can move around, but show up. And Kimberly, talk to me a little bit about authenticity. That is a buzzword right now, right? Well, I'm gonna share that. It's a buzzword because everybody wants to be themselves. Age of Aquarius, you have to be yourself. We don't have a choice. But what is it like showing up as your authentic self, and how has that helped shape your career?
You know, I tell authentic stories, and my opinions about those stories and how I am bringing those forward, that is my authenticity. Mm-hmm. I also am very protective of my personal life and what is private to me. I am not, though, that kind of influencer where I invite you into who I am dating and who my mama is and who my cousins are and where I was last week. Like, that's not the type of thing that I'm into. Okay. I think there are some people who are looking for community. And so oftentimes they will present themselves online. And by presenting themselves online in their most authentic way, they build community. And then sometimes what happens is if they take a misstep, then people are willing to throw them away or cancel them. And we see a lot of that. And it's like, well, I was really just trying to be my authentic, vulnerable self. But when you're online, people are scrutinizing you. They're scrutinizing every move that you make, because many times people assume that every single move that you make is calculated and not the fact that you are a human who is fallible, right? So my recommendation is find a way that you can show up authentically, but you don't have to be all of yourself for everybody on the internet. There are some people who do that and they do that flawlessly and easily. There are some people who have done that and they have ended up being told that they have been canceled or they have been attacked online for their opinions. And that's not me saying don't share your opinions online. It's just me saying that you can still be authentic and also curate what you share. Those two things can be the same. And then you can have more authenticity with your in-person relationships, as opposed to assuming that the only way that you're going to advance online is if you give us all of everything. And that doesn't have to be the case. Most people don't know not a doggone thing about me except for what I put on the internet. And that, I tell you, is a slither of who I am in my life. Wow. I think it's really easy for people to put people in boxes, and that's what people want online. They want you to be in a box. Here's why. Somebody told me this and I forgot who said it, but they said, I treat my social media like a television network. And the pillars of my content are the TV shows. And so I might have a TV show that's about Black history. I might have a TV show that's about film. I might have a TV show that's about internet safety. Those are my channels. Those are the boxes that I put myself in for the internet. And the reason that we want boxes is because that's how people decide to follow you, because they can depend on what you're going to present. I don't follow a creator because they posted one video. I follow a creator because I'm interested in their style and their consistency and what they show on a regular basis. I want that TV show, not just that person. And so when I started to approach my content that way, that was also part of how it started to grow, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm a creator. I could do so much. I can talk about this. I can do this, that. And that's a lot of times where creative people get stuck. They're like, but I don't want to be in a box. You don't have to be. But if you want people to follow you online and you want to grow your account quickly, you need to narrow down. You need to narrow down into a theme and give people that regularly. It doesn't mean you can't pivot, because clearly I am the queen of pivots. You have seen and heard me talk about how I've pivoted and the things that I love to share. But that also means that when my page grew the fastest is because I narrowed down and I gave people consistency and they knew what to expect from me. And so that's my conversation or feedback when it comes to authenticity. Is you can be authentic. You just don't have to be your whole self in all the places, all the time on the internet.
That bars, Kimberly, that was pure goddess mode content. I don't even have any sounds. Like if I have a sound, that's the sound. That was so next level. This content. Wow. That is so true. I'm kind of like, let me let that marinate. Treat yourself. Someone said, I treat my social media like a TV network. My content is my TV show. Put yourself in a box so that they can depend on what you present. But you yourself don't have to be in a box, but your content does need to be in some type of category. Correct. Because, for example, on TikTok, they have a very sophisticated algorithm. And so if you're just on there without a niche or narrowed focus, that's the real reason why the algorithm can't read your content, because it's too outside the box. Remember, you are not your content. You are the creator of the content. But the creator, the person who sourced the content, is a whole human with a mind, body, and soul that does not actually live on the internet. But you're putting your information on the internet as an extension of you, but you are not your data on the internet. You are the creator who's inputting the data on the internet.
Right.
Now that's,
and you just have to think about like who your favorite creators are. Like if you just make a list of like the top 3, the top 5, like I think about some people online who even do comedy, right? They have this model. They have those content pillars. They have those TV shows. I think about those creators who make up characters, and they're essentially talking to themselves, but they have these new characters that they have introduced. That is their TV show. And so, every so often you're going to get on there and you're going to see Katie talking to Michael, and Michael is the character that she made up. You don't follow her because she's talking about random stuff all the time. You follow her because you like Michael and Katie. You want to see those conversations over and over. That's why you follow them. And so when you think about who your favorite creators are, you can probably articulate what their quote unquote TV show is. And so for a while, mine has been hidden history or lost history. And I especially love identifying unknown white history, especially white history that has been oppressive. And so those are kind of like where I play on my Instagram.
Wow. Shout out. That is so amazing. So as you talked about that, I just thought of some of my favorite creators just in that conversation. Drewski, love his comedy. He's funny. He has so many skits, but I don't know. I sometimes know who he's dating, but he does not promote who he's dating on his comedy channel. Like that's other news, right? Like in other news, it's a different network. Jackie Anna. Love Jackie, love her luxury content. Like, as she says, she is the niche, and I love the content she creates. And she's also really good at keeping those boundaries up so that people don't get too far in her business, but, she got married and it was a thing. But anyway, Jackie Anna Luxury. There's a guy, Trey Moe, who I went to college with. He has a character. He has a Muppet named Keisha, who is his girlfriend to the comedian Trey Moe. So it's comedian Trey Moe and his girlfriend Keisha Jones. And so you're so right. He's created this whole world, this universe based off of the characters, which is essentially the network and the content. That's brilliant. And thank you for sharing your 2 cents, Kimberly. And so that's the T on authenticity. And speaking of authenticity, I want to jump right into the Uncontrolled podcast. Oh my God. I started it. I think I'm on episode like 4. And I was just like, this audio. I love the audio effects. Like it was just so awesome. It is so awesome. So this is something that you wrote, created, directed, casted, starred in a fiction podcast called The Uncontrolled or Uncontrolled. You can stream it on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. But talk to us about this new network coming from Kimberly Renee in the form of a podcast. Let's get into it.
Yes. So the backstory is this. About 2 years ago, before I limited some of my interactions online, I got an email from a gentleman. I had posted this video online where I was talking about a meme that was going around the internet that had false information about Black history.
Okay.
Essentially, the meme confused 2 men who had the first name Lunsford, who were connected to North Carolina. One was a white man, one was a Black man.
Okay.
The Black man, Lunsford, he actually had several businesses. He was enslaved at one point. He bought his freedom. He moved his family north, but in moving his family north, because he was free, and at the time in which he got free, he was barred from coming back to North Carolina because of the laws that prevented free people from other states, because he got citizenship in New York, from coming back to North Carolina. During that time, the white man named Lunsford ended up inventing Vicks Vapor Rub. 2 separate Lunsfords, one who was born in North Carolina, who was born enslaved, one who had a white man who had parents who were enslavers, who was in a completely different city. They were born at different times. The Black man was older than the white man. But the white man was a pharmacist. He's the one who invented it. Now, for context, for those who might know the story about Vicks Vapor Rub, yes, Vicks Vapor Rub is a salve, and yes, Indigenous and Black people have been using medicated salves for ages. It does not mean that the white man was not influenced by Black people, but the man, Lunsford Lane, who was the Black man, he did not invent Vicks Vapor Rub. He wasn't even alive when Vicks Vapor Rub was invented.
Wow.
So let's talk about that. Nor did he ever meet Lunsford Richardson, who was a white man, because they were in completely different states by that time. This was the story that I was unpacking in a much smoother way on the internet, right, on Instagram. Somebody got mad and they said, "You don't know what you're talking about. And they started calling me all these names online. Now, as somebody who is very much tech savvy, I decided to send him an email back. And when he opened it, I was able to see his location where he lived. And I was just in a mood that day. I was in a mood, and I was like, I want to know as much as I can about whoever this quote unquote anonymous man is, because I'm hyper fixated on him right now. And I'm like, who are you? So I found out his name. I found out his address. I knew what he did for a living. And so there I was looking at his house on Google Maps. Like, what if I was crazy, sir? Because you literally sent me this nasty email. Like, there are no repercussions to it. Like, you sent me this nasty message and you think nothing's going to happen to you. You're just being rude. Yep. You're going to go to church on Sunday. I bet you.
Exactly.
Just calling people out their name. I said, I don't. And eventually I forgot about it. Fast forward a couple years later, because this happened in 2022. I was just inspired to write. It was after Palestine had been bombed, and I wasn't really posting online at the time, because there was just a lot going on. I'm like, y'all are really just killing them people out there. I said, that's crazy. And so I needed an escape. And so I started writing. And the podcast is what came out of it. It was just like, I started writing something. And then I remembered all of these moments that I had. And I'm like, you know what if I write about that? Oh, that email that I got, I said, oh, let me pull that, and so I started pulling various things from, as a writer, a lot of times it's like people will say, write what you know. And so I knew that. I remember how that happened. And so I pulled that in and I started writing about it. And so I called my friends and I was like, hey, listen to this real quick. And so I started reading. They were like, oh, girl, what happens next? I'm like, I don't know. I just wrote the first chapter. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, well, go write some more. I'm like, well, chill out. Like, I just finished. They're like, well, right now. I said, okay. So I got back on my laptop, started writing more. 3 hours later, I'm like, hey, I got some more. And so they were going with, like, we were exploring the story together, and they were enjoying it like a lot. And I was like, okay. They was like, well, what you gonna do with it? I was like, I don't know. They're like, well, you got to do something with it. I'm like, okay, well, I said, maybe we do a podcast, like just something to get it out there.
Yeah.
And so that's how we did it. It was really just, I was writing it. I was calling my friends and they were listening to the story as I was writing it. I wrote it, front to back in 30 days. And then 2 months after that, we were in studio recording it.
Wow. And when did it drop on Apple Podcasts?
So October 31st. And so I chose, I did a whole character profile for Kenna, who was the main character. And so she is a Scorpio. So she's a little fiery.
Okay.
And so I wanted her to have like a backstory that I could play with later if I wanted to. And so I dropped it on her birthday, her imaginary birthday on October 31st.
Wow. This is so amazing. And I heard when you and I talked offline, we were talking about, like you were saying, it's like Issa Rae meets sci-fi horror thriller, kind of like Issa Rae meets Jordan Peele meets You.
It's like You. Yeah.
Right. Like the actual Netflix series You. But from your perspective and from your world of imagination, like, how was that recording? I mean, you just said it like, okay, I did that done. But how was it just like bringing this to life, and also just the recording of it, the audio? Because it seems like you do a little voice acting on the side. And I think I saw you in a commercial, didn't I?
I've done a few commercials. Commercials.
So how was that, all of that at the same time? So you were able to just kind of bring your fullness into this project. So how was that?
Yeah. So, okay. Right before the pandemic, I was actually doing a little bit of acting. I had started, a friend of mine who is a professional actor, and she was like, you could do commercial acting like pretty easy. So you should try that. So that's how I was doing some commercials. I was trying to venture into like fiction stuff. And I was like, well, let me try. And then the pandemic happened, and then Hollywood was shut down. And I was like, is what it is. So I've played around with, I've taken a few classes. I've learned a little bit, and by little, I mean very little.
Yeah.
But when I was writing the podcast, I was hearing it also. Like, I was hearing the characters. I was hearing the dialogue. Like, I wanted it to feel real. Like, I wanted to feel realistic. I wanted people to relate to the characters. And so I was like, okay, who is this modeled after in my life? And so I had a couple of friends who I was like, okay, what would they say? How would they say it? So when we were ready to move to casting, I kind of knew what I was looking for, because I already had people in my mind who some of these characters were inspired by.
Gotcha.
There's no one person who was like one real person in my life. They're all combinations. But when we got to casting, I was like, okay, I'm looking for, like, for example, the Jameson character. I was like, well, the person in my mind, the few people that I have in my mind, I was like, he got to be from New York. So he got to have a little bit of that accent, little Jersey, little New York. And he got to get on my nerves. You know what I mean? Because that's what's happening with Kenna in this thing. So he got to get on my nerves. And so now I was like, I guess I cast it really well, because now every time I listen to like episode 3, like, I want to fight Jameson. I'm like, I wrote this and I get mad at him. You know what I'm like? You're not even real. And I'm like, oh, shut up. I hate you, my God.
Right.
So when... So the casting was so fun. The casting is probably like one of my favorite things. And this isn't the first thing I've cast for. Like, even during the pandemic, as I said, I was making content, food content. So I actually created an entire series that I partnered with the brand, and we did like a full series where I cast and we cooked on camera and we did all that. So this wasn't new. This wasn't my first time doing that. And it also wasn't my first time voice acting, but it was my first time voice acting in a character. And it's so funny because people be like, now I feel like you and Kenna are the same. I said, we're not the same. That is a character.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, I don't know if I believe you. They were like, I said, first of all, I told you which parts were true. And I didn't do nothing about it in my real life. Like I told you that. But you still think that I'm this person. I'm not her. Okay. Maybe if I made myself into a villain.
Right.
Please. But I wanted Kenna to be an anti-hero. Like I wanted her to be realistic. I wanted her to struggle with doing good and not doing good. I wanted her to struggle between like, okay, I want to do what's right. And then I also want to do what's just. And that might be on the line of vengeance, but I don't really know because I'm in all of these emotions. You know what I mean? So I wanted her to be, she's a Black woman. She's a content creator, just like I am, just like so many people are these days. She's dealing with trolls, just like so many people are these days. And like, what happens when the troll becomes trolled? And that's really the premise of this. And I don't mean trolled in like I'm making fun of you way, meaning I might troll you that there are real consequences to the things that you were saying online, to the way that you show up. And so when we get into the studio, I always love to see people's reactions. When we get into the studio, people were arguing in the studio about whether or not Kenna and Jameson, who was right. And it was always a guys versus girls thing. And I was like, so juicy because all the girls were like, oh my God, I know this man. Like I've met him. He is like, and so all the guys were like, I mean, I understand like where he coming from. You know what I mean? Like he trying to show up. And I'm like, I must have did a really good job here.
Yes. When he said, I'm trying to follow my dreams, I was like, like I've heard that one. Like it was so relatable, especially in the world we live in, right? And I was just like, oh, it just kept getting better and better. And the creativity of it all was really what made it so unique and authentic because I have never heard anything like this. Yeah, it was kind of like you, but it wasn't because it was you, like you, Kimberly Renee. Like it was Black. It felt relatable. It felt culturally relevant. Like Black Twitter, like a thread that I found on Black Twitter, right? Like, okay, and this is kind of old school because I don't know that we really own Black Twitter like that. I know I'm not because I used to be, but things have changed. We have evolved. But back in the day, we used to have a huge community of Black Twitter and it felt like a thread that we were all trying to figure out, okay, what happened next? Okay, so what did Kenna do about that? And why he calling her out the blue? Like, it was just so relevant. So it's actually just fire. Like, I love to see the self-expression. So what is some of the challenges? Like, what was the hardest part of getting this to fruition?
So I have a friend who owns a studio in Charlotte. And so getting in the studio and pulling out the mics, and that was probably the easy part. The writing, that was the easy part. My favorite part is probably sound design, like deciding what exactly we were going to hear as, the characters were moving throughout the homes and, going, engaging with each other. Where the challenges started is first with casting, right? Trying to find the right person to embody these people, so Kenna has a best friend who's a little bit of a sugar baby, right? And so finding somebody who can present sugar baby, who can also be the type of Black woman who would date a white guy and kind of like where it be believable. I don't feel like this voice, my voice right now, would be like, oh, she dated a white guy? Maybe not. But I feel like we sold it with the character that we picked for Mia and her voice and how she interacts. I feel like that landed. But we were also limited with budget, right? Because this is coming out of my personal pocket, right? So I don't have the funds to give thousands of dollars to, name actors. So we're working with people who may have a very limited resume. And so one of the things that was literally a godsend, I had a friend of mine who I had not spoken to in probably 15 years. That is not exaggeration. Wow. 15 years. He randomly called me and was like, you know what? I saw you on the internet and I just wanted to say I thought you was doing a good job. Like, I don't really want nothing. You're doing awesome. And I just wanted to give you some flowers. And I just felt like I needed to tell him about what I was writing. And he was like, well, let me see it. Like, let me look at it. And he was like, he's an actor. He was acting when I met him 15 years ago.
Oh,
and
wow.
He was like, this is incredible. Like, this needs to be a TV show. Like, I don't know why you're trying to do it as a podcast. Like, you need to film it. And I'm like, well, I have this much budget. And so we're going to do this much budget with what we got.
Right.
So he was like, well, let me know how I can help you. Like, tell me what you need and this, that, or whatever. So so he came in and he was like, well, what if, like, do you need help with like coaching the actors? And I was like, yes, I do. Because here's the thing you have to consider. I'm in the room as a character playing Kenna. I'm also producing, which means I am connecting and with the audio engineer, giving them instructions. I'm also connecting with the actors themselves because they are working for me. So I'm wearing at least 3 hats. Yeah. Right. So when my friend reached out to me and he said that he was willing to coach them, what we would do is before they would come on into the recording room, he would work with them on their scenes. And when I tell you, the first time we did the cold read from the table read, I'm not going to say they were trash, but they were trash. Because it was a cold read. It was a cold read for context. When we went after the coaching, they came in and they nailed it. What? They brought it to life. And every scene that I can pinpoint to you every scene that my actor friend worked with them on and which ones they didn't, because I can tell the difference. Because it was very much necessary. He was a very important part to challenging them and pushing them. And so that part, I would say we got quality actors because they have the talent. They just needed the direction, but I'm not a for real actor. I just be right. You know what I mean? Right. And so having him in the room was critical for that, you know, and he like physically in the room, he was on Zoom. So he was on Zoom coaching them, you know, through our scenes, which was incredible. And so the most difficult scene for me, without giving sort of any spoilers, was probably episode 7. Okay. And so it's kind of that moment where after Kenna has gone to therapy and all the things that happened after that, that was probably the most difficult scene for me because it took a lot of energy for me to present that and to make that feel how I wanted it to feel. But the actors, they did their job. You know, when I was, there's a scene where Mia and Kenna are kind of going at it a bit. And we did it the first time, we recorded it the first time. We went back to listen to it. And I was like, yeah, nah. I said, I didn't do my job. I said, we got to do this again. Because Elaine Marway, who played Mia, she came in all the way up here. And I was like down here. I was like, no, we got to do it again. Oh, yeah. So gotta match her energy. Yeah, I had to bring it. So I leveled up. We leveled up. We came with it. When the scene was over, I was like, "Whoo, Jesus!" Listen, it took so much out of me. But I mean, wow. I think that's what makes. I don't know how other people do their podcasts. I don't know. Yeah. I know there's a lot of like people read them almost like audiobooks. You know, like you're reading paper. Yeah. But we did our best to give you some acting. You know what I mean? There was acting. Yeah. So I think we presented a good quality product. I mean, I think people have enjoyed it. It is very twisty and turny. I think it's unexpected in a lot of places. People are like, I didn't see that coming. Okay. What happened here? Like, how did we get? And so I really enjoy kind of putting that together. I think as a writer, I know a lot of times people will tell you have to like know where you're going before you get there, but I didn't because I'm the type of film watcher where I like to be surprised. So as I was writing it, I wanted to surprise myself. Like if I didn't know where I was going, I felt like I wouldn't leave any trail behind to tell you where we ended up because I wrote it front to back. Like I didn't have a plan. I just literally went into it. Wow. And that
Thank you so much for sharing, Kimberly. And that is spirit. That is the spirit, right? That is spiritual flow. Like it came out. There was no predetermined outline, all this. What am I going to do? When you let the mind can hold you back from your creative energy, your spiritual, creative, natural state of flow. And so the fact that you were able to just pull it out, like, oh, I'm just going to write it front to back. This is it. You had your friends there to kind of support you along the way. And then you got to a point where you felt like it was complete and then continued on. So following through, but also just being inspired. I think everything is flowing from the spirit. It's flowing from that inner chi, and able to bring that out to the world. And it's next. Tell us where we can stream it. I know I'm going to link it in this YouTube description, but where can we stream it right now?
Yeah, of course. So you can pretty much get Uncontrolled wherever you listen to your podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon. I can't name anymore because I don't listen to a gazillion podcasts. But like if you just Googled Uncontrolled, you'll be able to find the podcast.
Wow, that is so amazing, girl. Shout out to you, Kimberly. I can't imagine what's next, but before we get into what's next, I want to talk one more topic on self-love, because I've heard you pouring out your energy, your essence, your thoughts, your ideas, your creative energy, your writing, your video, your historian vibe era, rather, because I'm not a historian. So your storytelling, then we're going into podcasting. And on this channel, I love to talk about bringing it back into her, like her, the woman who created this space, this community, this culture. And one, how do you identify with, define self-love? And then also, are there any practices or rituals or things that you do to keep yourself grounded while you continue to spread this beautiful creative energy and share that with the world?
Yeah. So I think early on, just in my career as just a person, starting with my first job right out of college, I recognized that the world that we live in doesn't foster what I need for self-love.
Yeah.
Meaning the first job that I took, it was 8 to 5. It was weekend work. It was, be on call whenever you need to be on call. And I was like, this just doesn't feel healthy. And I asked the question, I said, who said this was okay? Like, who said this work schedule, this grind was normal? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Because I'm like, well, what if I was married? What if I had kids? What if I had hobbies? How am I going to do all of that and still get on a flight on Sunday, get where I need to be on Monday, work from 8 to 5, all of these? By the time it's 5 o'clock, nothing is open, depending on where you live.
Yeah.
Stuff is closed. You want to get your dry cleaning done. It closes at 5. Like, how do y'all do this?
It makes no sense.
To me. So I was very much interested in what balance looked like very early, because for me, balance is love. Meaning I am pouring into the parts of myself that need the most attention. That might change week to week. Sometimes it's I need fun. Sometimes it's I need rest. Sometimes it's like I need good food. But whatever that thing is that I need to feel like myself, then that's what I pour into. But I knew that I could not do that in corporate. And so that's why very early I knew that I had to chart my own path, even if it was more difficult, even if early on I wasn't making as much money as other people, even with family members telling me that I was crazy. It's like, well, why don't you stay at a job? Because it don't make sense to me. Like, I don't understand why y'all do that. Like, maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week max.
Maybe. Right.
But like this idea that you have to be productive is harming us, because productivity is, producing output in order to find value. That's dangerous.
It is.
Because what happens when you are not producing and you feel less than? Like, we see a lot of that with men.
Yep.
Because when they're unemployed, they don't feel often value. Obviously, this is not all men. This is not those conversations, but it's something that I see more often with men than I see with women.
Yep.
So your self-worth should not be connected with your output. So for me, my self-love comes and my value comes with who I am, period. And then also my input. What am I putting in my body? Where am I putting my time? Not what I am producing. Like, I don't feel like I was placed here to work 70 hours a week to make money for somebody else, to never have time for myself, my friends, and my family.
Yep.
Doesn't make any sense to me. So that's what self-love is for me. And self-love and success are synonymous to me, because that's what I value and I have always valued, is being able to have control over my time, and deciding where I am. Even if that means I'm not a millionaire, because that's the thing that people tell you. It's like, oh, you got, that's the dream. Like, maybe, but you don't have to be a millionaire to live a life that feels like a millionaire.
Yep.
Because often what millionaires have is the ability to access the things that they need when they need them. Because that's what most of us want when we say, I want to be a millionaire. Like, you don't want to have to choose between your light bill and food. You want to be able to get the things that you need. But when you consider that we also live in this world that's focused on consumerism, that taps into our fear of not having and our need to obtain things and creating desire. And I'm speaking as a marketer, where my entire job was to create a desire in somebody else to buy the things that I was trying to sell.
Yep.
So in many ways, I understand this intimately because that's what I was tasked to do as a professional. And so we teach each other to want more things. But I have, in the last 10 years, become a minimalist, meaning I don't have a lot of stuff because I don't need it.
Yep.
I have all the things that I need. I have all food. I have a really cool place that I stay. I get to travel the world. I get to go. I spend months at a time in various countries, which is something that I thought I had to be a millionaire to be able to do.
Yeah.
But I am not a millionaire. But I have been to a ton of countries, spent time experiencing their culture, their food, and I get to do that on a regular basis on a not millionaire salary.
Right.
So I think when you adjust how you think about life, and you adjust how you think about money and resources, and you even consider what life might look like outside of the United States, then you start to see how consumer centric we are. Why do you need 15 perfumes?
That part.
Why do you need 150 pairs of shoes?
That part.
Ain't but one on your feet at one time. I'm not saying you got to get rid of all that stuff, but you got 150 and then you want to go buy 3 more? Like, come on now, let's think about it.
You're right.
Do we need it?
You're right.
I think, and once I let go of that as an idea, where it's like, oh, I need that, and I have to. And that's what a lot of social media is. It's a lot of selling.
True.
Especially on TikTok.
True.
And so it's really easy to get caught up in that because that's how they tell you can make money. You make money by selling things to people.
Yeah.
So for me, self-love is I have all the things that I need. The universe provides me what I need. And don't get it twisted. I'm not poor.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the way that I spend my money is different. I spend my money on experiences. I spend my money really good food because that's what I love. And if you love clothes, you spend money on the things that you love because you love clothes. But also remember the energy that we are under when it comes to America, where we are being taught that you got to buy this, you got to buy that, you got to buy something else. There's even, I haven't watched it yet, but there's a film on Netflix that talks about the consumerism that we are subject to. And so often the stuff that we make, especially fast fashion, ends up just being dumped in landfills. So we're destroying the planet just with all of the things that we think we need to buy. Like, consider all of the food that is thrown away just at the grocery store, just so that we can all have options.
True.
Like, well, we have 152 different types of cereal. And if you don't buy it by the state, it all goes in the trash. And that takes me to the whole reason that one of the reasons that I started Food Love in the first place is because of excess. You know what I mean? So all these values in my life kind of, thread throughout. But that is what self-love is to me. It's being in control of my time, investing in myself in the way that needs to be invested in. Like I said, whether that is sleep, whether that is something good to eat, whether that is friends or family. And sometimes it's spa days. I feel like some people call that self-care. But I say self-care is all the time. You have to, as much as the world doesn't want us to do that, you have to put yourself first. You have to.
Self-care is all the time, girl.
Because
that's
they were like,
tweet.
oh, well, you got to put your kids. No, you don't. Let me tell you why. And this is coming from somebody who don't have kids and who's watching y'all be silly. When you don't take care of yourself, your kids get the worst version of you.
True.
Period. And so when they get the worst version of you, then they repeat those patterns with somebody else because they think that's what it's supposed to be like.
Yep.
You're giving the worst version of yourself to your husband, and then you're modeling that for your kids, or to your wife, to your spouse, whoever. You know what I'm saying? So you have to make sure that you are taken care of so that you have a cup to pour from. We all know that. We've heard you have to fill yourself up.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for shedding light on that. And it's serious. It's a serious matter of fact, literally. And I love what you were saying earlier. It's the Netflix show. It's called By Now. And I did watch it. And I am a minimalist to a certain extent, just like you, Kimberly. I think I watched that documentary maybe 10 years ago, right, on Netflix. Again, this was when it was just getting started. So we've had a very colorful and exciting trajectory in our career and our personal life because we've seen all this stuff come to pass. And so I'm so glad we could share this conversation on a public platform. I've shared on the other episodes. I met my husband on MySpace. We met on MySpace back in the day when we were kids. Listen, I was 19. He was 21. We was digital tech savvy. We was on MySpace in the chat room making moves. We was playing. So we dated as kids back then. Then 10 years later, we met on Tinder, another app, right? Another digital world. And my husband does all this stuff on blockchain and Web3, and I'm doing me. So I share that to say that there is someone who can match your level of intention. And in this digital world, we are in a new landscape, right? You might not meet your future partner at a coffee shop because you're creating all of your experiences online or even in real life. But the pleasure is in knowing that your self-love is your definition. And I love how you said, okay, going to the spa, but what else? That's very important. Because yes, in America, we will cap and make it look like, oh, I just went to the spa, self-love. But then right when you leave a spa, you still feeling a type of way about whatever you're trying to run from. And that just don't hit like it needs to. So Kimberly, that is a word. And thank you for shedding light on the family roles, because I like to ask that too. So Kimberly, I know earlier you said you don't put all your business out there, but what other hats do you wear? So I got married in 2019. But I'm married, no kids, but we do have pets. We got 2 pets. But Kimberly, what other hats do you wear, if any? I know you're a daughter. And how does that play out in how you show up in those relationships? So let's get just a little personal.
So I mean, obviously I'm a daughter, I'm a grandchild, I'm a sister, a cousin. I'm not an auntie yet. I do have some adopted children who I play auntie with. And I have no children, but I'm getting ready. I have a friend who's getting ready to have a baby. So I'll be an auntie-ish again. So one of my quote unquote brothers, he's having a baby soon. Wow. So I wear that hat. And then, friend is a big hat because I have quite a few, friends that are sort of like my chosen family that we kind of live life together in different ways, whether that is, we meet up every so often in a different part of the world or the country or whatever, or because I have friends all over, as you get older and your friends move from, where you met them, it kind of expands your experience and how you engage with each other. And so a lot of my friends, we end up like scheduling time together, like, oh, we're going to go here and do this on this time, or I'm having my birthday, so it's a lot of travel. Yes. So I think those are probably like my relationship hats and how they play out. I think that's probably the most that I can say without like giving my own life tea. Right. Look, I got you. Okay.
That's fine. Thank you for sharing. And it's so funny. And I really appreciate you sharing all these friends, this friend stuff. Okay. We got somebody on the show with friends, y'all. Listen, you would be surprised. Okay. Let's record this in time. It is 2024. We have Kimberly Renee on the podcast today sharing the multitude of friends and relationships that she has as friends. So that has been something.
Male and female.
Male and female friends, y'all. Oh my God. So listen, this is almost an ancient conversation of friendship and friends. I do believe in 2020, all relationships were uprooted and it meaning the definition of them, the value of them, whether it was a good friend or not a friend, whether, you know, like everything was like checked around 2020. So Kimberly, real quick, since you have friends and a little context on the movie Netflix, Leave the World Behind, right? There was a movie that came out on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, check it out at your own risk, right? It's whatever, but it was a good movie. I watched it. And one scene was the little girl in the film. I don't remember her name, but she was the only daughter, the younger girl in the film. She was obsessed with the show Friends. She was obsessed with watching VHS tapes of the show Friends. And really that was her whole obsession because in the world that she lived in, there were no friends. She didn't have any peers. She saw that on TV, looked at it like nostalgia, like, wow, look at them being friends. And then there was a conversation on Twitter where someone was, people were saying, why did they lie to me on living single, acting like I was going to be able to go to have breakfast at my friend's house before I went to work? Right? They were like, what was this utopia of friendship that they sold us? And I'm sitting here trying to find my friends. I can't even see my friend a year from now, whatever. So friendships and friends, the concept of friends, it's changing, it's evolving. Yeah. So Kimberly, please give us some tips, honey. How do you maintain those authentic friendships as you have continued to pivot and grow, especially in your 30s? Because it's harder as you get older. But Kimberly, give us some tips on how to maintain those very healthy, nurturing, not toxic, loving friendships.
Well, first I must say, because I am an entrepreneur, I get to spend my time where I want to spend my time. Okay. So I think I also have more flexibility than maybe some other people might, because if they're going to work 9 to 5, when they get home in the evening, they may not have as much energy for some other relationships, especially if they're married or if they're in a relationship. Yeah. And so for me, I would probably list maybe like really 10 close friends that I have who, like, if I need something, I can call on them and vice versa. And that's not how I define my friendships, meaning like we can get stuff from each other, but rather we show up for each other, whether that is just, emotionally or just keeping up with what each other has going on. And because of the industry I'm in, when it comes to content creation, I've made some new friends as, going along who have similar lifestyles. Yeah. So that makes it easy for me. So that makes sense. I would say finding friends who are in a similar lifestyle for you makes it easier for y'all to connect. So if you have friends who have pets, for you, for example, Giselle, having pet dates together, because you already know that it's something that you both have in common. It's a casual way to get together that isn't like, we got to dress up, we got to go ahead. We can go to the park with the kid, with the pet kids, Right. And then we can connect with each other, and that's a way that y'all can interact. So another way, for example, with me being a content creator, sometimes me and my friends, we will meet up to create content. Sometimes we'll meet up to go to a content event. Sometimes we'll just call each other in the middle of the day to see what's going on, like what you're working on, how you doing, how you feeling. Yeah. Some of my friends prefer primarily text because, they might have a 9 to 5. So during the day, we might text each other. But these are just like simple ways to keep up with your friends. It's not something that I do all the time, but like if I think of something that's funny or interesting, like I have been very much paying attention to what's happening with Mr. Luigi, who just got arrested. And so me and my friends, we are texting this. And I'm like, I was looking at that photo of him and that don't look like his eyebrows.
Right.
What do you think, And so we keep up with each other with like various things that are happening. But again, we have similar lifestyles, and so that makes it
Mm,
easy for us to keep up with each other. The friends of mine who are in a different stage of their life, our
uh-huh.
relationship isn't necessarily as close. So friends who are married with multiple kids, they're in a different place,
Yeah.
So yes, we are friends. We connect with each other, but it's gonna be different and
Yeah.
not as often because their responsibilities are different. So
True.
I am just blessed to have um people who understand sort of my values. I
Hmm.
just got had a call last night with a friend of mine, and she was like, "Yeah, girl, so we're gonna do this digital nomad thing too." But she's taking her whole family, like she took
Mm.
everybody, so they getting on the road together.
Wow.
So she just went to a Caribbean island with her family, and so that's something that we can talk about. So we have shared interest in that.
Yeah.
But really, it's just, keeping up with each other, saying, taking a temperature to see how people are doing. We don't get together as often as you might with somebody who lives in your neighborhood because we don't
Yeah.
often live in the same place. But when we do get together, like we schedule that time, it's like, okay, this time is precious. We're going to
Yep.
spend time with each other. And so we have to be intentional about that. But honestly, it's usually little calls, little texts, little nuggets of things that we share
Hmm.
with each other, just keeping up with each other.
And that goes a long way. Like that, I reconnected with some of my friends, like a friend recently, and a text here and there does go a long way, especially as we all are growing. And I love what you said about similar lifestyles make it easier for you. In other words, for example, if you find yourself caught up in the matrix, that 8 to 5 hustle and bustle, and then get off work and then go get the kid, and then you may or may not be in alignment with someone who chose their time over everything. Like time over money, baby. You can't buy my time. My time is more valuable than the money you're trying to give me. I want my time. And so I love that. And I've seen people like in the dating world, which that is not my ministry. I don't talk about none of that. I don't like none of that because I just feel like that ain't my talk. But there's plenty of people out there who talk about that. But anyway, the point is you will find your person or your people while you're operating in your purpose. When
Yeah.
you're in your purpose, the right folks will come along your journey, whether it's a significant other, good friend girls, good homeboys, whatever. But you're going to only be able to see them and find them while you're in your purpose. That's the plot twist.
Yeah.
But if you at the job that you hate, you're not
Yeah.
gonna meet nobody at that job thinking that it's gonna be your home girl, gonna be your bridesmaid, all this other stuff. And so, what the world is calling us Age of Aquarius, new earth, new rules, post 2020, we're being called to live more authentically, which means getting out of that sunken place that you might find yourself living in because you think you have to, but you really don't. And it's an act of self-love to pull yourself up out of situations that you have outgrown or that you have evolved from. And Kimberly, your story, oh my God, it's the epitome of evolution, baby. Like, oh, I see the industry shifting. I'm finna go ahead and make a move before I get shifted out. And so, wow, thank you so much for sharing that last tip on friendships because it's trending. I follow the social landscape with people's thoughts and opinions, and friendships has recently been under attack. They talked about like Issa and Molly's friendship on the show Insecure, and was that a friendship, and what was this? And it's so good that we have these stories out there that we can talk from. But yeah, similar lifestyles. That's the easy way to say it. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think then you have similar priorities, right? And you have similar understandings for what the other person might be experiencing. You know what I mean?
yes.
So I do have friends who are married, who have children,
Mm-hmm.
um, but the ones who are also entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
so we can relate and talk on those things. And then I
Yeah.
have friends, like I said, who are content creators and people who I've just met along the way, going to events and, a friend introducing a friend, and now they're my friend, my friend group. And so it's different having friends as an adult, because as a child, it was just like, okay, classroom, neighborhood, it
Yep.
was kind of like set up for you.
Yep.
But finding new friends as an adult is effort.
It is.
It's
It
effort.
is.
Because the people that I grew up with, I don't really talk to. We're on different paths doing different things. But
Yep.
shifting my lifestyle. And like you said, kind of being in alignment with that, is what has guided me to people who support me.
Yeah.
And some of them come from the internet, just people who have just been nice, on the internet and said kind things. And then, sometime one day I replied to them, and now we talk about everything, so it kind of runs the gambit there. But I will say, because I don't want anybody because I know a lot of times people feel like they're being encouraged to leave their jobs and become an entrepreneur. I don't encourage people to do that, because not everybody is an entrepreneur.
True.
Being an entrepreneur, it's a lot more. Even if you sell t-shirts, the business is not just making the t-shirt.
True.
90% of the time you're doing stuff that has nothing to do with the t-shirt. And that 90% is stuff you have to learn, and sometimes the hard way. So I know we talked about earlier, getting out of situations that are not serving you, but you want to do that smartly. You want to do that with a support system if you have it. Do it, when I talked about how I started a business on the side, I waited until I was making the same amount of money or more than before I left. So there are ways that you can do it if entrepreneurship you feel like is calling you. But everybody online is trying to sell you how to start your own business, and most of the people don't do nothing but teach you how to start your own business. They never started their own business.
Right.
So you just got to be mindful of stuff like that, because I've seen a rise of people.
Yeah.
Oh, I can teach you how to make money online.
Especially after 2020, right? Like the pandemic brought out a lot of different artists or con artists, whatever. But there were a lot of different modes that came online. We're like, what is this? And yep, you're right, Kimberly. And what has been really interesting and fun about this podcast is that I've been able to have conversation with multiple walks of life from women. We've had some women who have left corporate, but had a very beautiful, decorated career, like 30 plus years at Coke, Microsoft, but they still ended up or started up, maybe, let's say not ended, but begin again where you are now, right? Or another one of my guests, she corporate-ish, but she's always had a side hustle. She's always been creating something more than that bargain for 8 to 5 lifestyle. And Kimberly, I love how you shed light on it earlier. You was like, okay, I don't know how y'all doing this, but this is not for me. What's happening right now on the planet? And so this is more esoteric. This is my opinion. This is not mine. I ain't got no psychology books to reference, but in my opinion, what is taking place on the planet is that the entire world as we know it is changing and evolving. And if we don't collectively evolve with it, then you will be finding yourself in a place that no longer exists, right? Like you could be there, but it's not real. The illusions are starting to come down and come off. And so now I don't want, and that's why we speak it from the same space, but one is being more mindful, right? Be demure about it, balance. But I'm your Leo friend. I'm like, you better set it on fire, girl. You better make some shake, because it's not because man and woman, because they're not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you nothing. It's not going to be told to you in this very conservative way that you and I are just speaking on these topics. This stuff is happening. Like when the pandemic happened, some nurses left the industry. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't. Some people, I got to stay here. We had the United Healthcare CEO got shot. Okay. He got knocked. And now there's this conversation around healthcare and the healthcare industry, and just things are being uprooted right in front of our eyes. And Kimberly, it's so nice because you are an entrepreneur, right? And that's why I love these perspectives. So you may or may not have found yourself in a dark place of, wait, where did everybody go? Is something going on here? Because you were spiritually in tune and knew that, hey, I'm not going to do this hustle and bustle. But when 2020 happened, we all had to sit down somewhere. Yeah. And then that's when everybody was crafting and, coming up with this other ways to express themselves. And so, of course, this is for educational and entertainment purposes only, but really just be inspired to be aware of what's taking place on our planet, right? It's just a new world. And I love that for us. And I love that for you, Kimberly, for just being true to yourself. Like the truth will set you free. Kimberly is free. Literally free. And it's just so much more. So before we wrap, because I feel like I could talk to you for another whole hour, what are something that you would like to leave our audience with is inspiration, or like, because again, we created this space to shed light on women like you. We're making an impact. Like, we're not really doing it for money. Money is great. We love money. Money comes to us effortlessly. But Amen. In the new world, again, because we're taking down corporations, all this capitalism, racism, sexism, the patriarchy, all that's going away. So now it's all about impact and leaving your mark on the world and living in your legacy. So Kimberly, what advice or tips can you leave the audience with as we close out our conversation?
You know, what stood out to me is when you said the word legacy. So often I hear people talk about legacy, but they talk about it from the perspective of, it's often a selfish position, because they're thinking like, what will people say about me when I leave, which is great, you know, and what impact will I have left when I die? And that's great. But then there are some people who consider their legacy one lived through other people, like their children, for example. Mm-hmm. And I love children, don't get me wrong, but your children have their own legacy and you have your own legacy. Mm-hmm. And what I've found, you know, growing up in a household where, you know, I was encouraged to try and do as much as I wanted, you know, and I'm thankful that I had a mom who let me try and then stop and then try and then stop. And so I still kind of do that. And so I think I wanted to bring that up because of that style of parenting. Because so often people focus on legacy of what their child is going to do versus giving themselves the freedom that they want to give their child. Meaning, whatever you want to try, whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, whatever, that is your legacy, not what your child has done. And so for creatives out there, I just want to pinpoint or reemphasize something that I brought up earlier about having so many things that you're good at and not being able to figure out which one that you want to stick with. You can do all of them, maybe not at the same time, but you can do all of them. You know, try something now, see how you feel. Yeah. And if you don't like it, do something else. Yeah. The main thing is I would encourage people to really invest in their relationships, because the relationships are what keep you grounded as you're trying these different things. You know, I could go on and on just giving people random, you know, nuggets of advice. But I'm excited about where we are, like as a people, not necessarily as a country, but as a people. Yeah. Because many, as you mentioned, so many people are awakening to the idea that life doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be where healthcare is inaccessible. It doesn't have to be where my job takes the absolute best for me and I have nothing else for my family. Yeah. So for those who are inspired by these ideas, I would say connect with others who are inspired by the same thing so that we can actually make change collectively. Yes. I think that's really the only way. We can all be awake, but we can all be awake in jail. Somebody has to decide that we're going to fight back and get the keys. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's my advice, sort of like in the, like, as you said, the esoteric big idea is finding ways that we can fight back collectively. Yeah. And then that being, again, your legacy, because now you're trying those things. It may not always be a creative try, because not everybody is creative in the same way. Yeah. Maybe you are similar to me in that you speak up or you speak out against things. But I think we all have a place and a purpose. And I'm excited to see where we are in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yes, me too, Kimberly. Oh, that was so nice. Thank you so much for your time, your story, your voice. And absolutely. And I'm just inspired. Like, I left here feeling inspired. I hope you all did too. And yeah, we're going to stop there because I feel like I got another question, but we're going to keep it to a minimum. Listen, with that being said, again, Kimberly, and where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work and everything we talked about today?
Yeah, of course. So you can connect with me on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Patreon at It's Kimberly Renee. And please check out my podcast. I think you'll love it for all the folks listening, especially if you enjoyed Issa Rae's work, if you enjoyed the TV show You, I feel like you'd appreciate the podcast. It is a one season. One season is up so far. It is a 1 hour of listening time. So you can listen to it on your break. But yeah, give it a check out. Check it out.
Yay! And with that being said, you are watching the Goddess Giselle podcast. This is episode 13, a conversation with Kimberly Renee. I hope you feel empowered, inspired, and encouraged to keep doing you. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.